Your federal government, our federal government is so big. It's so big. And, you hear the Republican Party in particular saying that we got to shrink the size of the government. It's too big, it's too big, it's too big. And you hear the Democratic Party saying if you slash these things, you're taking away vital services and needs of folks in this country. But here's the thing. Despite your political preferences, there's a such thing as the 10th Amendment and moreover the Constitution. I've heard, for many, many years, people saying, well, this is not in the Constitution, so, this is unconstitutional. And I just kind of glossed over that and whatever, whatever. They got laws. They've got this stuff figured out. I doubt it's unconstitutional. And then one day I educated myself. I just decided to read the Constitution. I read it. I read all 27 amendments. And I've over time I've studied them. I have studied them, the original articles, and what I found amazing was the federal government really is supposed to be incredibly limited. You have the terms a white list and a black list. I don't know how many people actually know what I'm talking about here, but a blacklist is a list of things you can't do, basically. A white list is a list of things you can do. So, in terms of the Constitution, the federal government works on a white list. The states work on a black list. The states have almost unlimited power. The federal government is supposed to be limited to what the Constitution says. The 10th Amendment, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it in front of me, but it says powers not granted to the federal government by the Constitution shall be reserved to the states. So, that means it's not in the Constitution, you can't do it. The states can do it, but you, federal government, cannot do it. And you can read Article 1. Article 1 goes into very specific details about what the federal government can and cannot do. And it mentions commerce, for example. Federal government has very wide-ranging powers in terms of commerce. It has war powers. It can have a navy. It can have a military. That's all laid out in Article 1. Article 1 doesn't, or anywhere else in the Constitution for that matter, mentions anything about healthcare. Doesn't mention anything about education. It doesn't mention anything about your food. Doesn't mention anything about the environment or energy or any of this stuff. And yet we have departments created by the federal government for the sole purpose of regulating these things, even though the federal government has no legal jurisdiction here. So how does this happen? How does this happen? You have corrupt politicians. You have corrupt politicians who get in and deliberately ignore what's in the Constitution or make excuses for it. I've heard the excuse, I saw it somewhere online. Somebody was saying, well, the preamble mentions, if it's for the good of the country. Well, first of all, the good of the country, that's debatable. Everybody has a different opinion of what is for the good of the country. That's not very concrete. But moreover, the preamble is not legally binding. It is simply a area of the Constitution. It basically says, welcome to the Constitution. This is what it's all about. Have fun. That's it. That is all the preamble is supposed to be used for. That is all it is intended for. And every legal scholar will tell you that. Preamble is nothing more than information. So you can't use that as a legal argument. You'd be stunned how many people don't really truly understand the Constitution. They teach you about it in high schools. I had it in high school. I didn't really understand it in full detail either. I didn't truly get the fact that the federal government was supposed to be limited based on what the Constitution granted it. I didn't get that concept. Somehow I missed it. There are many, many people saying we need this and we need that and the government should do this and that. It's all unconstitutional. Every last bit of it. You should be going to your state legislatures and arguing these things. I don't, if you're for health care or you're for clean energy or whatever, fine. To each their own, whatever. I'm not going to tell you what you should and should not be for. That's up to you as a citizen of this country, but understand that the Constitution is the law of the land. You should be is in your best interest to make sure that your government is following the law. And when you have corrupt politicians making excuses, ignoring the Constitution, that's a real problem. They shouldn't get reelected. Those people should be booted out of office. I encourage people to, at the very least, look at Article 1, specifically look at the enumerated powers. Look at specifically what it grants the federal government. Federal government is not supposed to have very much power at all. It has enough power. It has enough. But all the nitty-gritty stuff that affects your day-to-day life is supposed to be left up to the states. That is the way the framers intended it to work. And that is the way it is in the law. It hasn't been amended to allow any of these things. So keep that in mind. And finally, I'd be interested in hearing what other people think. Leave me your comments. What do you think on this?